Een goedemiddag, good afternoon, and welcome to the Balie, and welcome to our program, Freedom Lecture. And today is the prize of activism. And this program is highly supported by het V-Fonds. So thank you very much. At the heart of this today's program is the case of Ibtissame Betty Lachgar, who is an activist and who has, there is a fight, she has a fight for freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, and women's liberty. And her fight has sparked a, let's say, intense debate inside and outside Morocco. So we will talk about that today. My name is Baram Sadeghi, and I have the great honor and maybe greater responsibility to be your moderator, your host. And I'm sure that you can hear English is not my first language. As a matter of fact, as someone who was born in Iran and raised in Iran and now living in Holland for 4 decades, I have no idea what my first or second or third language is. And I'm sure that will be the case for the most of our speakers and maybe the people in the room. So, but enough about me. Let's talk about the program. We will start off with a lecture, Freedom Lecture. And I'm so glad that Ghislaine Mamouni, the lawyer of Betty, is with us today. And she will take us through the political and legal issues. So it's a very, I've read the lecture yesterday. It's a great lecture. So then you understand what's on stake for Betty and maybe other people. After the lecture, I will have a short conversation with her. And then we will watch a short video. And after that, we will have a panel conversation. And after the panel conversation, there is at least 25 minutes for your questions. So that's the program for today. On that note, 3 practical questions. You know, this program will be live streamed and also recorded. So please take that into consideration, that you will be on camera. So if you don't want to do that, you know, please sit somewhere, you know, so we cannot see you. The other thing is, you know, please don't forget to put your phone on silent mode. And finally, Victoria, our photographer, she has to do her job, you know, so she will stand here, she will lie there. I want to see the biggest, the nicest, the most beautiful pictures of you, Victoria, at the end of the day. So do your job, and if you are here, no problem at all. So, Freedom Lecture, Ghislaine Mamouni, would you please join me here?
Thank you very much, Bahram. Thank you. Well, today I am speaking to you not just as a lawyer, but as someone who has sat across from Betty Lachgar in a cold room in Al Arjat prison near Rabat. Someone who has watched her health deteriorate week by week. Someone who has heard her say with exhaustion, but also with rage, that she is being psychologically tortured. And someone who last October, after a hearing before the Rabat Court of Appeal, publicly stated that she had lost all confidence in Moroccan justice. I said it in my pleading. I was reprimanded for it by the presiding judge. I repeat it now, here, before you. This lecture is about Betty's case, but it is also something much larger. It is about the deliberate use of law as a weapon, about how a state can fabricate a crime out of an act of feminist resistance and put a 50-year-old disabled woman behind bars for it. I will speak to you about 2 things mainly today. First, I will tell you who Betty is and what her daily life looks like in prison. Then, I will take you back in time to understand how Article 267.5 of the Moroccan Penal Code came to exist and what political moment it was designed to serve. And if we have a little bit more time, maybe in the discussion, I will tell you why this law is fundamentally incompatible with Morocco's own constitution and its international obligations. So who is Betty? Ibtissame Lachgar, we all call Betty, is 50 years old. She is a clinical psychologist, a feminist activist, and the co-founder of Balie, the alternative movement for individual liberties, which she built from the ground up in 2009. For more than 15 years, she had organized, marched, been threatened, harassed, received death threats, and never stopped. In 2009, she organized a public Ramadan picnic to protest the criminalization of eating in public during Ramadan, an act of civil disobedience that shocked Moroccan society. In 2013, she organized a kiss-in, not a sit-in, a kiss-in, outside Parliament to defend teenagers prosecuted for posting a photo of themselves kissing on Facebook. She has fought for rights to abortion, for the rights of LGBTQI+ people, for the decriminalization of consensual behavior between adults. She has done all of this while surviving Ewing sarcoma, a rare and aggressive bone cancer she was diagnosed with in her 20s. So Betty is a cancer survivor. She has a prosthesis replacing the bone in her left arm. She has lived with disability for decades. She takes medication and she needs medical follow-up. And she is in prison. Today, she is the first ever Moroccan feminist to be imprisoned for a very act of feminist activism. On the 30th and 31st of May 2025, Betty attended a feminist event called Women Create in London. She wore a t-shirt that read, "Allah is lesbian." She had worn this t-shirt before in Paris in 2021, in other international feminist spaces. She posted a photo of herself wearing it on Facebook. Then on the 31st of July 2025, while she was visiting her sick mother in Morocco, she reposted that same photo on Twitter, accompanied by a comment in which she criticized religious ideology, calling it, as she always has, fascist, phallocentric, and misogynistic. The t-shirt is a feminist statement. Maybe some of you know it. It is a play on a phrase that has circulated in the feminist and queer movements since the 1970s. I saw God, she is black, communist, and lesbian. It was worn in London in solidarity with Iranian lesbian women condemned to death. It has nothing to do with Morocco. It was never worn on Moroccan soil. Still, on the 10th of August 2025, around 8 police officers came to Betty's home in Rabat, ostensibly to deliver a summons. By intimidation and deception, they compelled her to follow them immediately. She was not allowed to take her medication. She was not allowed to contact a lawyer. Her phone was taken from her hands. She was brought not to the local police station, as she was told, but to the National Criminal Investigation Brigade in Casablanca. 2 days later, she was placed in pre-trial detention on charges of causing harm to the Islamic religion, under Article 267.5 of the Penal Code. On the 3rd of September 2025, the Rabat Court of First Instance sentenced her to 30 months in prison and a fine of 50,000 dirhams. On the 6th of October, the Rabat Court of Appeal upheld the sentence in its entirety. So now Betty is detained at the civil prison of El Arjat 1 near Rabat. What she has experienced since August 2025 cannot be described as anything other than punishment, not for violating prison rules, which she has violated none, but for who she is and what she represents. From the first day, she was placed in solitary confinement. The prison administration described this cynically as protective custody. They claimed she could be harmed by other inmates due to the nature of her conviction. Neither Betty nor her defense team ever requested this. She was held alone until very recently, when, thanks to the public solidarity with her case, 3 other detainees joined her cell. Still, she cannot interact with other prisoners. She is not allowed to access the yard at the same time as others. She is, in effect, in isolation. She has no mattress, no pillow. This despite the fact that she has a prosthesis implanted in her left arm, that she requires adapted sleeping conditions, and that medical reports documented her need for immediate surgery. Her left elbow is completely dislocated and fractured. Without surgery, the outcome is continued bone deterioration, displacement of the prosthetic stem, and infection. Her doctors warn of a possible amputation. All she is given in prison is paracetamol. The surgery that had been scheduled for September 2025 never happened. Instead, Betty was sentenced to 30 months. Her requests for provisional release on medical grounds were denied repeatedly at every stage. Her contact with the outside world has been reduced to a few minutes of phone calls per week, to a single authorized number. No visits except from her lawyers and her very close family, knowing that they all live abroad except her sick mother. Her sister, Siham, has spoken publicly about her deteriorating mental and physical state. Betty herself, in one of those rare phone calls, described that she was experiencing as psychological torture. I want you to understand this concretely. We are not talking about an abstract case. We are talking about a woman who lost significant weight, who is exhausted, who has constant pain in her arm, who is being held in isolation conditions, not for security reasons, but as a message to every woman, every activist, every person in Morocco who might dare to think differently. This is what awaits you. As Betty's sister, Siham Lachgar, said, "It is not my sister who is on trial, it is freedom itself." So where did that law, that Article 267.5 come from? Let me be very precise about something that is often misunderstood. Article 267.5 is not an ancient law. It is not a remnant of tradition or colonial era legislation. It was introduced in 2016 in the context of deliberate political project carried out by the Islamist Party of Justice and Development, the PJD, which governed Morocco from 2011 to 2021. Before 2016, Morocco's penal code contained provisions that criminalized insults to public authorities and state institutions, but there was no article specifically criminalizing harm to Islam as a religion. The previous press code, Article 41, contained a provision on causing prejudice to Islam, but it applied to publications, not to individuals as such, and it carried fines rather than prison terms. In 2016, while reforming the press code, which officially abolished imprisonment as a punishment for press offenses, Parliament simultaneously and quietly inserted new provisions into the penal code. This is the sleight of hand that Human Rights Watch documented in detail in 2017 in its report titled "The Red Lines Stay Red." Under the new press code, journalists could no longer be imprisoned for press offenses. But through Article 267.5 of the Penal Code, applicable to all persons, including through social media, the door to imprisonment was reopened, wider than ever. The punishment under this article is 6 months to 2 years in prison and a fine of 20 to 200,000 dirhams. If the offense is committed through electronic media, including social media, the sentence rises to 2 to 5 years. Betty was sentenced to 30 months, well beyond the baseline, squarely in the range reserved for aggravated electronic publications. Now let's talk about the men behind the law, Mr. Mustafa Ramid and the PJD. The architect of this reform was Mustafa Ramid, as I stated. He was the Minister of Justice from 2012 to 2017 under Prime Minister Abdelillah Ben Keren, both members of the PJD, the Islamist Party of Justice and Development, that came to power on the wave of 2011 Arab Spring protests and the constitutional reforms that followed. Ramid is a lawyer by training. He was a defense attorney for Islamist figures before entering into politics. In 2012, he personally intervened to secure the royal pardon of convicted Islamists. During his tenure as Justice Minister, he repeatedly confirmed that the penal reform would maintain the criminalization of homosexuality, sex outside marriage, and public eating during Ramadan. He famously told homosexuals in a 2015 radio interview that they should change their sex to avoid legal problems. In 2015, Ramid presented a first draft of the penal code reform. It was met with fierce resistance. Activists, civil society, and ordinary citizens mobilized under the hashtag Code Penal no pasarán, the penal code will not pass. The draft was withdrawn. Ramid regrouped, made cosmetic adjustments, and returned with a revised version, which was adopted in 2016. This time without the explicit political controversy buried within a broader legislative package alongside the press code reform. The timing matters enormously. Between the first draft of 2015 and the final adoption in 2016, the world witnessed the attack on the Charlie Hebdo offices in Paris on the 7th of January 2015. 12 people were murdered. It triggered a global debate about blasphemy, free speech, and the limits of religious criticism. In Morocco, the reaction was not a reaffirmation of press freedom. It was, in the hands of the PJD, precisely the opposite, an acceleration. The political window opened by Charlie Hebdo attacks was used to argue that Islam needed stronger legal protection and that the state had an obligation to defend the religious constants enshrined in the 2011 constitution. The PJD framed blasphemy as a national security issue, a social stability issue, a question of Moroccan identity. And Article 267.5, as adopted in 2016, punishes anyone who, I quote, causes harm to the Islamic religion, the monarchical regime, or incites against territorial integrity. So in a single provision, 3 of Morocco's constitutional red lines were collapsed together: religion, the monarchy, and the nation, and their violation became a criminal offense, punishable by prison, committed not only in print, but on any electronic platform. But this law violates the very constitution it claims to protect. This is the central paradox. The 2011 Moroccan constitution was adopted as a response to the Arab Spring. It is a document that explicitly guarantees in Article 25 the freedoms of thought, opinion, and expression in all their forms. It was adopted by referendum with a vote by 99% of the population. It was presented to the world as Morocco's modernizing moment. And yet, Article 267.5 was introduced by the very parliament sitting under that constitution in the name of protecting its religious provisions. The PJD used the constitution's recognition of Islam as the state religion to justify a law that in practice criminalizes opinion. This is not constitutional protection. It is constitutional manipulation. The Human Rights Committee, the treaty body of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which Morocco ratified in 1979, is unambiguous on this point. In its general comment on freedom of expression, it states clearly, prohibitions of any form of disrespect towards a religion or a belief system, including blasphemy laws, are incompatible with the Covenant. Article 267.5 is a blasphemy law. It is thus incompatible with Morocco's international obligations. Morocco hosted the drafting of the Rabat Plan of Action in 2012, a UN document that sets precise criteria for determining when restrictions on speech are justified under international law. Those criteria require, among other things, that there be a real probability of concrete harm, that the speaker have incitement intent, and that the restrictions be strictly proportionate. Betty's t-shirt, worn at a feminist event in London, fails every single one of those criteria. I think we will talk later about all the arguments we have to defend Betty's case, which is still ongoing. But I want to close this legal section with an observation that I believe captures the full absurdity and injustice of this case. The man who introduced Article 267.5 into Moroccan law, the man whose political project created the legal instrument used to imprison Betty, is Mustafa Ramid, as I stated. And it was the same Mustafa Ramid who, in his public Facebook page on the day Betty was arrested, called explicitly for her prosecution. He wrote that when it comes to deliberate attacks on the sacred symbols of religion, I quote, no tolerance is possible. And he cited pointedly Article 267.5 of the Penal Code. So the author of the law is also its most vocal enforcer. The man who drafted the legal trap also publicly demanded that it be sprung. This is what political justice looks like. This is why I have no confidence in Moroccan judiciary in this case. Not because there are no honest judges in Morocco, but because this case was not decided by law. It was decided by political pressure applied through law. So, as I said, we are bringing a cassation appeal before Morocco's highest court. We raised 8 grounds of cassation, which we will talk about maybe later. And we are asking the court to annul the conviction and order Betty's immediate release. So just to conclude, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, I am a lawyer. I believe in law. I have devoted my professional life to it, and it is precisely because I believe in law that I can no longer remain silent when I see it used in this way. Betty Lachgar did not commit a crime. She expressed an opinion, a feminist, political, symbolic opinion on foreign soil about a cause that has nothing to do with Morocco's domestic law. She was arrested because Mustafa Ramid called for her arrest. She was imprisoned because the law he wrote made it possible. She is suffering because no one with the power to stop this has chosen to do so. We live in a world where 89 countries still have blasphemy laws. Morocco, a country that positions itself as modern, open, reform-minded, has not only maintained but recently strengthened its own. And it is using that law now in the most aggressive possible way against a woman who has spent her entire life fighting for the rights of the most vulnerable. The international community cannot be indifferent. Human Rights Watch has called for Betty's immediate release. Amnesty International has designated her as prisoner of conscience. More than 300,000 signatures have been collected on a petition addressed to the king demanding her pardon, and the UN Human Rights Council has heard testimony about her case. All of this matters Visibility matters, solidarity matters. This lecture today, here in Amsterdam, is part of that solidarity. Your presence here is part of that solidarity. What you do with what you have heard today, how you speak about it, to whom, and with what urgency is part of that solidarity. Betty is in a cold cell in Al Arjat prison near Rabat. She is 50 years old. She is in pain. She is losing weight. She is still here. She is still there. I wish she was here. She is still there today as we speak. She has not stopped believing that this fight is worth it. Neither have I, and I hope after today, neither will you. And to end this lecture, I have a personal message from Betty. Betty insisted that I thank on her behalf and from the bottom of her heart every single person who supports her, who thinks of her. She asked me to read you this quote by Gisèle Halimi. It remains a curse to be born a girl in most countries of the world, at the very least a matter of bad luck, and that realization pains me. And she added regarding herself, I quote, I am too free a woman not to cause a scandal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the lecture. Ever since she's in jail, have you visited her? Have you seen her? And what was the last time you saw Betty?
The last time I saw her was last Thursday, not of this week, the week before. And I see her more or less every Thursday, except when I have travel or something. So once a week, more or less.
Once a week. So, you know, the longer version of your lecture, you know, later, you know, part 3 about the legal consequences of it. You mentioned that you had, you know, you probably can say, you know, reprimand,
Yeah.
by the court. What does it mean that you got a reprimand by the court? What does it concretely mean?
Well, it was more an intimidation because as a lawyer, I used the appropriate word not to insult the institution because I know it's, you know, it could have legal consequences, which it had not, but still the court didn't like it. So the prosecutor, you know, he stood up and asked that all what I said be written in the judgment. It is written in the judgment now. And yeah, it was more pressure on intimidation, more than legal consequences, but they didn't appreciate at all.
No, so it's not informal; it's really formal now.
It's written in the judgment, so yeah, it's quite formal.
May I ask, was it the first time you got a reprimand?
It was the first time.
It was the first time. Okay, okay. And finally, you said we are bringing cassation. Yes. Appeal before Morocco's highest court. What's the time schedule of it? When? Okay,
well, we just filed the memorandum with the arguments last week. It was last week, so we don't have a precise deadline, but we hope we will have, you know, a date for the pleadings in the coming weeks and maybe a decision in the coming 3 months. I hope it's, you know, just to give an idea, but we don't have a specific agenda.
And are you the only lawyer for her? Are you working with a team of defending team? No,
we are a team actually. The team was there from the first instance, and then in the appeal stage, and hopefully we'll all be together also at the cassation stage.
Yeah. I hope so, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay, to get a better, you mentioned a lot of, about her background, some of the biggest actions, she organized, like a kiss-in or the Ramadan picnic. Are we right now in the Ramadan?
Absolutely,
okay,
yes.
Okay. So you mentioned, but nevertheless, it's nice to see a short documentary about 8 minutes about where she comes from. And it's made by Human Rights Tattoo. And they gave Free Betty Coalition, which one of our speakers, you will see her in a couple of minutes, co-organized. They gave her the right to use it. So let's start the short documentary for about 8 minutes.
Mon utérus, mon choix, ma liberté. This sounds obvious, but this is not the case in Morocco. The state controls the body and the sexuality of women. With Mali, I fight for women to be in charge of their own bodies, wombs, and sexuality. My name is Betty Lachgar. I am 44 years old, and I was born in Rabat. I am a nomad and always traveling. It makes me feel free. I live in Paris and in Rabat. However, in Rabat, I feel at home, gathering with friends on my rooftop terrace or be at the seaside by myself. I co-founded the Mali movement in 2009. We organized many successful actions and demonstrations. We especially fight for sexual and reproductive rights as LGBT and abortion rights. Le bras, il y a quelque chose qui ne va pas. As we are celebrating the 10th birthday of Mali, journalist Hajar Reissouni is being held in prison for allegedly having had an abortion and having a sexual relation outside marriage. So our fight is far from over. There is no liberty of conscience in Morocco. It is a religious dictatorship. I am one of very few openly atheist people in Morocco. A lot of activist gatherings and actions take place in someone's home because it's safer. سلام. Still, the neighbors call the police because I am an unmarried woman who has male visitors.
Unique, universal.
Bah, il faut...
Union.
Non, universel, c'est bien. Universalité des droits. Hein. The human rights tattoo will be my first tattoo and important for me because human rights are an important theme in my life and my activism. When growing up, I had the space to always ask questions. I have learned a lot from my father, who was also a political activist. Before he died of cancer, I learned an important lesson from him. resistance is not about numbers, but about impact. And he was right. The first action we organized with Mali was a symbolic picnic during the month of Ramadan. Only 6 people showed up for the picnic, but with dozens of policemen and journalists present, the impact was huge. In poetic acts of civil disobedience, Mali works together with performance artists in peaceful, non-violent actions that break certain taboos. When Moroccan women have unwanted pregnancies, they may only have an abortion when the woman's life is in danger, and only with the authorization of the husband. The Moroccan government uses women's bodies as a political battleground and to silence critical voices. For many years, I am fighting for the abortion rights of all women. Being able to make our own choices about our health, body, and sexuality is a basic human right. Denying women this choice is denying women their freedom and autonomy. No doctor, politician, or imam should decide for women about their bodies. Since I survived cancer when I was 20 years old, I feel I can be fearless in my activism and my fight for people who are victims of discriminations. Overcoming cancer drastically changed my perspectives and personality. I have been assaulted by the police and other people, and I have been on an ISIS hit list. But I feel powerful and without fear when I can help others in fighting for their individual rights and justice. I want to say to women everywhere to be brave. We have to keep fighting against patriarchal terrorism until we have freedom. حرية.
Yeah, Hurriya. Freedom. May I have Yasmin and Yasin and Mariam over here, the members of panel. Please join me here. Yes. Yasmin Rahman, a specialist in violence against women and girls, safeguarding, and at the intersection with of faith, race, and gender. Yasin, a journalist at the Volkskrant who reported on Betty's case. That's right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And Mariam, a campaigner, writer, and spokesperson of One Law for All and the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain. You have been in the Balie before, yes? Yes, I've seen you.
I'm glad to be back.
Cool. Mariam, let's start with you. We hear Betty, but I will have a conversation about the impact. Of course, you can join the conversation, but I will start with you. We hear Betty's telling about resistance. Resistance is not only about numbers, but it's about impact. Could you please tell us about more about the impact of Betty's work?
Yeah, well, it's a great pleasure to be here to talk about Betty, and especially to hear from you, who's been in touch with her, and we're just so happy that you're here. And of course, we're all hoping that she's free very quickly. I first came in contact with Betty in 2009 when she messaged me, and it was in October, and it was after the picnic, yeah. And since then, I've been in touch.
The Ramadan picnic.
The Ramadan picnic, yeah. And since then, I've been in touch with her. And I've been inspired by her work, and I've always tried to support her because I think what she does is so important. And I feel like she's one of those people who knew exactly what she was doing, what she was confronting, the risks that were involved, and the importance of it. And I do think that Betty represents the best of secular feminist struggle. It's unapologetic, it's very human, and it's always targeting not people, but power. And I think that's why her work resonates with so many of us. The picnic during Ramadan that you mentioned, addressing compulsory fasting rules, a public kiss-in that you talked about, where she opposed the policing of intimacy, campaigns against virginity testing, abortion bans, and the criminalization of sexuality. These acts exposed how the authorities in Morocco operate in everyday life and challenged it. And the same is true with the T-shirt, Allah is Lesbian, for which she's now in prison. And as was said, she wore it outside of Morocco, never inside Morocco. She wore it at several celebrating dissent conferences before this latest one in London, in Germany as well, in Paris, as you mentioned. And it was initially to oppose the death penalty of 2 lesbians in Iran. And I think when we look at it, she did it really fundamentally to question the assumption that God is male and that male authority is natural and superior. These are important feminist questions that need to be raised by feminists. And of course, to challenge this idea of compulsory heterosexuality, which is not really a so-called moral code, but it's a structure that sustains and stabilizes hierarchy, and is presented as sacred in order to be able to safeguard it from criticism. And I think really when we look at blasphemy laws, that's the purpose of blasphemy laws. They're not there to protect religion, to protect God. I mean, isn't that blasphemous to think, if you believe in him, that God needs protection? But it's there really to protect power, and they're designed to reinstate fear and to warn others of the cost of dissent. And I think it's really a legal mechanism to discipline and criminalize dissent. And I think it's especially dangerous, according to the state, when a woman blasphemes. And that's why I think the reaction to Betty has been so severe and so brutal, because women are expected to embody honor, preserve tradition, reproduce the structures that limit them, and refusing that role is considered really dangerous because it destabilizes the patriarchal order, and when women withdraw that obedience, they expose that which is presented as divine authority in the face of human authority. If one woman can question the sacred, well, then others can too. You know, if one woman can wear a T-shirt, Allah is Lesbian, well, so can others. And it shows that fear can be replaced by courage. I think Betty's activism is an assertion that no idea is beyond examination, and this is why precisely her activism and the activism of so many women in Iran, Afghanistan, and across the region and world means so much, and why it's so critical, and also why it is considered so dangerous. So I'm glad to be here to defend Betty, and I do hope that we continue to campaign for her and she's free very soon.
Thank you, thank you. Great that you put it in perspective, different subjects. Let's ask you especially, about the impact of her work, as far as you can tell us about it. How does it land, her work, in the broader society in Morocco? Does it have any impact or any change, or maybe sparked any debate? And I don't know why you look so. Let's start with you, because you look, kind of troubled. So,
yeah, well, why you have so much respect for her is because she fights for minorities, right? So
yeah, marginalized people.
And that's
maybe,
so important about the democracy, which Morocco is not a democracy, but like the majority has it. Okay, because the majority is straight, the majority is Islamic, so they have no problems with the rules because they do not affect them. But she stands up for minorities, and that's basically in the whole world what you do when you fight for human rights. But that's also, I think, the reason why her arrest and her imprisonment didn't really spark a big debate in Morocco. You had recently huge protests against economic state of the country, and yeah, but not about her imprisonment. It does not. Of course, there are people who fight for her freedom in Morocco as well, but it's not a big national debate. There are no big protests for her freedom. Also, when I ask people in my personal environment about what do you think of her, they say, like, of course we are not pro her imprisonment, but why does she have to be making her point in this way? Why does she have to hurt our personal feelings? And that's because they are so connected with religion. So the identity.
I get it. Yeah. Could you add something to Yasmin?
Justine, yeah. No problem.
I would like to echo Mariam's words about Betty. I met Betty through Mariam, and I'm eternally grateful for that relationship being fostered. Betty did and does stand up for minorities, but she also stands up for the majority. The majority of the planet are female. And we must remember that when we're talking about women's rights, we're not talking about a minority group. We are talking about more than half of the population of the world. Yeah. And right now, that half of the population are crying. We are dying in every corner of the planet. I've come from the UK, where every 3 days a woman is murdered. So, you know, the figures speak for themselves. In terms of the impact of her work, you know, I'm utterly dismayed by the lack of noise about this case and other cases of blasphemy. And when I speak to other feminists and say, why aren't you standing up? This woman's stood up so bravely and courageously with hardly anyone else around her. We should be standing up in solidarity. And they say, well, she could have chosen another way. Women have been calling for millennia for equal rights. The time for politeness has gone. Misogynists ask us to just speak quietly. Just don't make too much noise. We'll get there eventually. How many more millennia do we have to wait for equal rights, for control of our own bodies, the right to live our lives freely in the way that men do, the right to be able to walk the streets without fear of being raped and murdered and attacked, the right to equality before the law, and I could go on and on and on. I want those rights for women. I want the rights for men. I want those rights for every single human being on this planet, and I'm proud to stand with Betty today.
Cool. And Ghislaine, could you add something to this, the matter of impact? How does it land in the country? How do you see that?
Well, Betty has always been the most, the feminist that spoke the most loudly, actually, in Morocco. And actually, like I was saying to Mariam earlier, the other feminists, we felt safe behind Betty because she was radical, and we thought nothing could happen to us as long as Betty stands there, because we will always be seen as more consensual, less provocative, and everything. And now that she's in prison, we are, afraid, actually. Maybe I will be next, who's next? That's what we are asking ourselves. And in terms of impact, what she did was great, like bringing taboo subjects to the table about individual freedoms, LGBTQI+ subjects, rights. Yeah, she was the one who brought all these subjects into the public space, and after Betty, the institutionals were happy to speak to someone more moderate, like maybe myself or other feminists, the traditional feminist movement in Morocco. But it is thanks to Betty, really. Yeah. So her impact is huge. Yeah.
By the way, when during your lecture you talked about the law in 2016, but are there any other laws, new laws or policies which are meant to target cracking down civil life or other liberties?
It's the most recent one. The other ones, come from the colonial era. Most of the laws on individual freedoms, like the one criminalizing homosexuality or sex outside wedlock, adultery, even eating publicly during the Ramadan. All of these laws come from the colonial era. This one. I thought it came from the same time. Really, I was very surprised myself when I knew about it, that it was so recent. But what we can say for sure is that in practice, there has been a change, definitely, in Morocco, and Betty's case is a sign of that backlash in using these laws. Betty, as you said, wore the T-shirt many times before. The first time it was in 2029 in Paris, then there was Cologne in Germany, then the UK, and she was even convoked by the prosecutor in 2022 about the same T-shirt in Morocco, and they let her go. They said it was, it was fine. But this time, it became political. Mustafa Ramid, as I said, had something to play about this, and this time she was arrested, and really we didn't believe it. I thought she would be maybe arrested and then freed a few days after, but it's, it became worse and worse and worse. And every decision, we were very surprised to see how hard they have become, and how hard it will be to get her out of this.
Yeah. By the way, I don't want to scare you off, but we know all that the notion of the long arm of the countries. You as an Iranian-born lady, and we know also, maybe Moroccan government, they have a long arm as well, in other countries. So the consequences for people who are in diaspora, people who has dual nationality, Moroccan, French, Moroccan, Dutch. Could you please tell us, question for of you, how does a case like that maybe has a precedent for the people living outside and supporting this while they have a Moroccan background or Iranian background? I don't know whether I ask the question in a proper way.
No, but
Yes.
Long arm of Morocco is very is subtle, so it's different than like the long arm maybe from Turkey or Iran. That from Morocco is more subtle, because when you talk to people here, I wrote an article about it a few years ago with people who are living in Holland and want to get rid of their Moroccan citizenship, and that's not possible against the state.
I remember your article.
It's not possible only if the state can take it away from you, but you cannot distance it. But it affects people, of course, in a few areas. So if you are living here, when you have outspoken criticism on like the king or religion, that's dangerous. So there are a few subjects in Morocco where you cannot talk about, and even maybe they let you go if you're not very big, but if they see it sparks something, then it could be very dangerous if you go back.
Yeah, they say there are 3 taboos in Morocco.
Yeah.
You mentioned 2 of them. King, religion, and territory.
Yeah, of course.
We
territory,
will not talk about Polisario.
Yes, the western part of the Sahara, of course.
No.
Yeah.
So we will delete this from this live stream. We didn't talk about West Sahara, yeah?
Yeah, and we didn't talk about it. Yeah, but of course, and
even in diaspora.
It can. It's not that strict. That's always difficult with Morocco, because it's not so. You don't know when you are crossing a line. It's not so hard. It's not like. But there are people who are going back to Morocco, and they were waiting there in the line for the passport control, and they were picked out. Yeah. So it happens. Yeah.
How about you? Or you can, and you too, because the long arm of Iran is probably not that subtle. It's not so subtle, so it's very hard. So I would like to hear you, especially when it comes to these questions, like apostasy or blasphemous actions. Please explore.
Well, I mean, I think clearly this is also a message for the diaspora, because what it's saying is that even though you wear a T-shirt outside of Morocco, you can still face 30 months in prison and be emotionally tortured, really, and physically mistreated, you know. So it is a clear warning sign, and it does, you know, it reminds me of people going back to Iran. Well, I can't return to Iran, but removing all your social media posts and, you know, not being comfortable with saying what you really think, even though you're not even in your country of origin. So it's very dangerous for freedom of expression and for freedom of conscience. But I want to address a couple of points that Yasin mentioned, which I think are very important about why people have this hesitancy to defend Betty. And I think that's one of our roles, really, is to persuade people that you have to defend Betty. Because in a sense, it's something that Yasmin mentioned as well, it is a defense of yourself as well. Because even if you're not a you know, radical feminist as Betty is, you will have opinions that conflict with the state. You will definitely have opinions that conflict with the state. You are not human if you don't have an opinion that doesn't conflict with the state, unless you're a goat or a sheep, you know. So, and even then you would, you know, with all the slaughter of animals, you'd have a conflicting opinion. But so the question is that if you want to live in a society where you can say what you think without fear, it's people like Betty, as you mentioned, who open that space up. And if you defend her, you defend your own right to think and live differently. And the other issue is, you know, when the question comes up about, well, she shouldn't have done it this way. Well, it's none of your fucking business how she did it, because that's her freedom of expression. You express yourself the way you want. Betty can express herself the way she wants. I will express the way I want. Freedom of expression is not a group right. It's not for a community to decide how we express ourselves. It's an individual right. And what is so wrong with saying God is a lesbian? You can only find fault with it if you are a raging homophobe. If you hate lesbians, people will say God is a woman. They used to have female deities in the region. In Morocco, in the region, we had female deities. So it's absurd to say that it's so offensive that she should spend 30 months in prison. And the other thing is about, oh, well, their personal feelings were hurt. Well, what about Betty's personal feelings? What about my feelings? What about the feelings of those who are not religious, who are free thinkers, who are non-believers? If it's about feelings, well, you shouldn't even utter a word of the Quran anymore, because it hurts my feelings. I can't stand to hear it. You know, I don't want to hear your sermons. I don't want to hear the azan. I don't want to hear it. It hurts my feelings. But that is not how you live in a society. You have to understand that there are people who are religious and there are people who are non-religious. There are feminists and there are raging misogynists. And, you know, we all have to live with each other, of course. And people have a right to express themselves as long as they're not hurting anyone. And so I think these are important points that, you know, defending her is a defense of civil society in Morocco and beyond, which is why she matters to so many of us.
Cool. Thank you. I just want to repeat the question to hear your thoughts about, and then I will go to the audience if there are any questions for about 20 minutes. Yes. So as I said, you know, about the impact on the diaspora of this imprisonment. Could you please elaborate about that?
I think it, I mean, like Yasin, I wrote an article about this because I think Betty's case sets a precedent. There is the long arm of the law, and I'm British-born of Pakistani Indian heritage. And it's really stopped me in my tracks thinking, will I ever be able to go back to the Indian subcontinent, to Pakistan or to India, given that I'm still Muslim, but I am very, very critical. And, you know, I share platforms with Mariam, and, you know, I would describe myself as a radical feminist. But I am concerned about what this means for us in the diaspora, because we can't rely on the British state to defend us, because it will not. I'm also worried about rogue elements within the community. In Britain in 2015, we saw the murder of Asad Shah, a Glasgow shopkeeper, who was murdered because someone else in the community, Tanvir Ahmed, accused him of blasphemy and then took it upon himself.
In the United Kingdom?
In the United Kingdom, in Scotland, in 2015. And Tanvir's now, you know, serving a life sentence for murder. Wow. So it's the two things. It's the state. Should you go back to your parents' country of origin? what happens then? It's what the Pakistani state could potentially do in collusion with the British state against dissenters and free thinkers in that country. If we travel abroad, if I go to another Muslim country, say I don't know, I decided to go to Morocco, or I went to, I was going to say, God forbid, Saudi, but should I go to another Muslim country, would what I've said hold consequences for me there under those, blasphemy laws or, laws of challenging the state? I think it's silencing feminists, it's silencing activists. We may not even be speaking to each other because the fear is palpable. But we have to be brave. This is not the time to shy away in a corner. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of other Bettys across the world. And we owe it to them, and we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the generations to come, to stand up and to fight and to say no more.
By the way,
no, but what you said, we cannot rely on the British government to help us. I think when you see Morocco, of course, with Betty, but also with other political prisoners, there are a lot of people in Morocco that are in prison, journalists, activists that just spoke their mind. And that all plays while Morocco was the last years advancing their bans with other countries like the US, with Israel, and all the Western countries with the board to have strict border rules. They do not criticize. There are no statements from countries that say release her. So that's also happening with.
There
you
is
see
no
the political,
solidarity.
and
there is no solidarity from
other
governments.
No, and you I think it was 2 years ago that a Moroccan activist on Facebook posted about he criticized that Morocco had diplomatic ties with Israel, and he was also put away for 5 years, I think.
5 years?
Yes, he is now also in jail. And it was not even about religion or something. It was about connecting ties, and they pushed it also to something, also offending a constitutional something. So they also always use those rules. And there was no international statement from other countries. So you see how also they turn away.
I just want to ask a question in a couple of minutes about, the final question for you, about how the political bodies, political parties, or maybe the king, has reacted on this case. But you wanted to add something to what Yassine said.
I wanted to add one thing that Yassine said. I don't want people to go away from this meeting thinking this is just about Muslim countries. Muslim countries are absolutely leading the way in terms of blasphemy laws. There is a feminist activist in the UK called Amrit Wilson who has been campaigning for women's rights for 50 years. She has just had her overseas citizenship of India card revoked by the Indian government because she has criticised President Modi and his Hindutva movement. That's real. She can't go back. She was born in India, and that we're going to see more and more of that happening to feminist activists across the world. So this is not just about Islamist movements, but it's also about Hindutva movements. It's also about the other fundamentalist movements that are operating at will across the planet.
By the way, to give you an idea, in Holland, we have the blasphemy law till 2014. So in 2013, they started to remove that, and in 2014, it was actually the fact. And I guess the biggest case we had in Holland was the case in 1968 with Gerard Reven, who was a writer, probably as a journalist, everything about it. So it was years ago. He was really actually brought to the court because he insulted God, the Catholic God. It was that one, because Gerard Reven became Catholic, but he got.
But that's why also what I said earlier about why you have so much respect for her, because she fights for something that not the majority of the Moroccans are supporting her, because in Holland you see religion is not that big of a deal anymore, and in Morocco it's still very well connected with identity, and that's why so many people are offended.
As I said, the final question for you, and then I will go around for the audience, as the political parties or the king How did they react? Any
Okay,
reaction?
just before answering your question, just a couple of words about the territorial jurisdiction and about the impact on the diaspora. Betty's case is definitely a precedent and a dangerous precedent because it shows us that Moroccan law can actually apply in your Western countries here, which is crazy from a legal standpoint, which is one of our main arguments for cassation, because even from a legal standpoint, a felony, when a Moroccan citizen, commits a felony abroad, he cannot be prosecuted in Morocco unless the felony is also a felony in the country where it has been committed. And, we haven't been heard on, we had no response from the courts on these points, but it is very dangerous, and it doesn't only apply to religion or blasphemy or freedom of speech. Let me give you an example. Cannabis, I think it's legal here in Holland. What about a Moroccan?
Not really, unfortunately.
No, we have an experiment.
We call it, we tolerate it. We see it through fingers.
Okay. But I was wondering if a Moroccan, I don't know, smokes a joint here in Amsterdam and takes a picture of himself, will he be arrested in Morocco? It's as simple as it. And
but
I
it's
know the
crazy
Moroccan
because
diaspora
you have
goes
parts
there
in Morocco
every...
where you just walk in a region and you smell the hashish smell.
But if you,
and they smoke a lot. So.
I know,
the police knows.
Every conversation in Amsterdam, regardless the topic, it will always end up with our, weird
just to give an example outside the
So let's go back to the main.
Okay, political reaction, zero. Really nothing, well, except from Mustafa Ramid, who asked that he be prosecuted.
But they are very small right now, am I right?
We have the elections coming at the end of the year,
right now,
they have been very small in 2021. It was, a failure.
But before
for
that,
them.
they were very big.
Absolutely, and now it's a big question. We will see what will happen in September 2026. Because we will have the legislative elections, and they are, doing a great job to be re-elected and to come stronger, and that's our fear.
And then you see they're like they are interlinked, political and the law.
Yeah, but that,
because then there is a new political party. When they get big, maybe it has impact on the law.
Of course, we are expecting a change in the family law, in also the criminal code. We want, to delete all these liberticide rules. So we hope they will not be elected. They will not have the majority in the next parliament and government. So it's no support, no political support for Betty. Even in the feminist movement, it was very hard, and I had to struggle to have some support for her to, make people sign a petition. Even, feminist voices, they really were silent for Betty, saying she went too far this time. And, she looked for it and blah, blah, blah. So it was very hard. And your question about the king, Betty filed a request for pardon. And we really hope this will, lead to a pardon, and that we will have it in maybe the coming weeks or coming months. The king, shows a lot of. Clemency. He showed it in the past for Hajar Raisuni, for some of the journalists, for felonies about freedom of speech. So the request has been made, and we hope for Betty too. We will have clemency, because Betty's case is not about just freedom of speech. It's a humanitarian case. She is really sick. She risks amputation of her left arm. So we don't want her to be amputated in a Moroccan prison, and we really hope that the king will respond to that request.
Can I just make a comment about solidarity?
Very briefly.
Because the thing is that obviously governments have not taken any action, because again, it's about religion, and religion has such a privileged position that it can do whatever it wants, and people will turn away, the governments will. So the French government, where she also resides, hasn't really made any hasn't filed any sort of grievance or complaint. We've contacted the UK government, they haven't done anything. But there has been a lot of solidarity. I just want to give you an example. The Free Betty Coalition now has hundreds of organizations that have joined, many of them with tens of thousands of members. And Avaz started a petition in collaboration with the Free Betty Coalition. And it's only been a few weeks, and it has 376,000 signatories asking for the Moroccan king to pardon Betty. So that is there, and we need to keep. Governments never do anything nice for that benefit people, but they are sometimes forced to do things that are nice because of public pressure, and that's where we all come in, is to keep that pressure on so that it's an embarrassment for the Moroccan government, an embarrassment for the French government, for the British government, for the Dutch government, why they haven't taken a position on this case.
Cool. Sana, can I ask you to go around with a microphone? So if there is a question, please raise your hand, and it would be nice if you can stand up, because our technician said it's nicer to see people, talking when they are standing. So any questions or remarks? Over there is a question. Yes, please, yes. Okay. And please address your question to one of the members of panel.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it Ghislaine? Thanks for the work you've been doing for Betty. It's good to hear about it. We travelled to Morocco 3 or 4 years ago, and I was amazed by how it developed. We went to Tangiers 20 years ago, and it was horrible, but it's much better now.
Question mark?
The question is this: what can we, as foreign nationals, do for Betty?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And maybe if you can add something to what you will say, please be free. So what can we do as foreign nationals?
I really, talk about her, sign the Avaz petition, join the Free Betty Lachgar coalition, and get organized and join the organizations that exist to make intelligent work for her. We can't do, a lot in Morocco. We are, we have the legal procedure going on. We have the request for pardon going on. It's, sensitive issues. So maybe here, join the coalition, sign the Avaz petition, and talk about her.
Can I just add that there's freebetty.org, and if you go on there, you can see the various petitions that are out there for her, and also various actions. For example, on December 10th, we had a global day of action to take mattresses to the Moroccan embassies in various cities to highlight the fact that she doesn't have a mattress. And now we're organizing for March 8th, which is International Women's Day. So if you're able to join in, both on social media, but also by organizing protests in front of Moroccan embassies in various cities. In Holland, for example, I think we did have an action in Amsterdam for the Mattress Day action. So that would be very helpful as well, to just keep that pressure on.
Cool. Other questions, please raise your hand. Over there, yes, please, yes.
Hey, thanks. I have a question for Mamouni. Thanks for your talk. I was wondering, where are you now in the process in Betty's case, and what are the next steps in the upcoming month or big appointments?
We had the first instance decision that condemned her to 30 months. Then at the stage of appeal, it was confirmed, so it's still 30 months imprisonment. Now we are filing a procedure before the highest court, and the highest court is there to decide just if there has been a mistake in applying the law, and we hope they will decide there has been, because there has definitely been. We have 8 major arguments to give to that court. So we just filed the memorandum last week, and we expect a date to do the pleadings, and then a decision in the coming next months, maybe 3 months approximately. There is also the request for pardon, which Betty already filed, and which, we don't know if and when it can come to a decision. We will also file, meanwhile, requests to see her sentence reduced. So we have done this already, and it has been refused. but we will do it again and again until, we get something, but we will keep doing it as long as it is possible. But the next major step is la Cour de Cassation, which is the Moroccan Supreme Court, which will decide, if the other courts, the lower courts, have applied the law correctly or not. And we hope, we have a good decision.
I hope so. Final questions? Please raise your hand. No? No? Yep, okay, again.
I was wondering, has Moroccan society become more conservative ever since the picnics started? How has society changed?
Thank you.
At the time of the picnic, it was, more or less still open. But we notice a backlash, which is an international backlash. Actually, we see it in the U.S., where the right to abortion has been questioned a few years ago, and it's the same happening, I think, everywhere in the world. And Morocco is not an exception. There has been a recent asking people, making statistics and asking people, poll, thank you, Maria, a recent poll that says that the young people are more and more conservative, actually, and I think there is that backlash. Even from the time of my own parents, I think they were freer at that time. There was no, the law on eating publicly during Ramadan was not applied. University restaurants were open all day long, and students could eat at that time, which is really unimaginable now. Every year in Ramadan, we have some people, 10 or 15 people being arrested for that. There is a backlash, definitely. It's worldwide, and Morocco is also touched. So.
Yeah. Could you add, can you add something to this?
Yeah. The thing is that now when you talk about the Islam in Morocco, it's the interesting part of it is that they also keep the more radical Islam out of the door. Yeah. So the way they practice Islam in Morocco, with hoofddoek,
veil or hijab,
scarf.
Yeah.
There are a lot of women in Morocco that don't wear a hijab, and you see them in my family's from Marocaine, and you see it also in Marrakesh, Rabat. So it's difficult to. There are no recent studies that really put it precise on how many young people are still radical Islam, and so that's difficult. But of course you see changes with young people that they're not as much. They are religious, but
maybe conservative, but not radical.
Yeah,
are you saying that?
And it depends also on the region. Where you are when you are talking.
Give me an idea. Are we talking about
when
North?
you're talking? No, it's the same with every country. Also in Holland, when you talk about more the cities, big cities, more where higher educated, it's different than when you go to the places where there are the farms and where people are less educated. So you see there are also varieties where it plays a big role and where it's not so much of a role.
One final question. No. Okay, so I would like to finalize this session by, Siham, the sister of Betty. She couldn't join us here, unfortunately, but she sent you a message so you could read it out loud for us. So please tell us about that, and then I will finalize with some practical issues. Yes?
Okay, so this is from Betty's sister, Siham Lachgar, to all of you who are here. She says, unfortunately, I can't be here with you physically, but thank you for being here and for this fight we are waging for my sister in blood and in struggle. Betty's been fighting for women in Morocco and elsewhere for so many years. She's a feminist and a human rights activist known for her acts of civil disobedience and her radical stances on individual freedoms. Today, she's deprived of her freedom, unjustly and arbitrarily imprisoned. But even in prison, she continues her fight by helping and supporting her fellow inmates. She never gives up because that's how we were raised. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. For us, injustice is a fight. Thank you for speaking about her. Thank you for thinking of her. And thank you for shouting loud and clear that her place is among us. We won't give up. I won't give up. And I'm lucky to have you here today to help me with this fight. I thank you again through Mariam for being here. I can't wait to meet you all in person and give you a big hug. Betty, we're waiting for you to celebrate your freedom, and you've always been a pioneer. One day, Morocco will realize all the good you've done for the women of this country. Thank you for being my sister and simply for being you.
Nice, nice. So we are now at the end of this program. Please allow me to thank the panelists. So Ghislaine and Yasmin and Yassine and Mariam, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Okay. And of course, our audience for your smart questions as well. Within 2 hours, about 7 o'clock, we will continue with the second session of today. Today, it's the link between blasphemy and states. And at 9 o'clock, that will be great, you know. Then we will see Farawaz Farvardin, who will give a concert in the playing cell just here. And you are all welcome to listen, to have a dance, because then it will be, you know, it will be evening. So it's after Ramadan. So we can dance, we can smoke, we can do everything,
we'll
you know.
only do it if it's Ramadan time.
No, not during, but after the Ramadan, we can go. And so have a drink at the bar and, of course, continue the conversation. Our technicians, you know, to make this possible, thank you so much. And, of course, Sana Felius. Sana, the program editor, thank you so much for organizing this session and the next session. Finally, you know, I just thought about, you know, Rumi. You probably all know Rumi, you know, the Persian poet, philosopher, you know, born in what we call today Afghanistan. So he wrote in Persian, and he died in Turkey. So everybody says, you know, Rumi is our man, you know, he's Afghan, he's Iranian, he's Turkey. One of his really shortest poems, beyond what is wrong and right, there is a field. I will meet you there. Thank you so much, and go in peace. Thank you. Bye-bye.